Welcome everybody to another episode of the Virtual Success Show podcast, where I'm your host, as always, Barbara Turley. I do co-host this show with my co-host Matt Malouf, who's not with us today. But my guest today, I'm joined by Nigel Bennett, who is the co-founder and owner of Aqua-Guard Spill Response. Just want to get my notes here. And also, because I want to mention your book, also author of the book, Take That Leap, Risking It All for What Really Matters. And he's also the founder of True Beach. He's been a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization for 15 years, has won a whole pile of awards. I'm not even going to go into how many they are, but I met Nigel on a mastermind call that I had the pleasure to be on a few weeks ago. And when I heard his story about, how he has managed to not just delegate effectively, but has actually managed to remove himself pretty much completely from the day-to-day operations of his business. So Nigel, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much. It's just a pleasure to be on your show. I'm in Whistler here in British Columbia, and you're in Chamonix, I guess, eh?
Yeah, we're both in the ski slopes, but there's no snow, and we're not allowed to ski.
No snow, and we can't go out. Yeah, I know.
During this crisis time, and it's been really great connecting with so many entrepreneurs at the moment during this crisis time that we're currently in. But yeah. So Nigel, to kick off, just give us the quick, Aqua-Guard spill response. And what I love about this company and about me finally interviewing you is that it's different from most of the types of businesses that we've had on the podcast or that I've been talking to, in that it's kind of, it's way off the charts from what I would normally be doing in the digital world or whatever. So give us the quick synopsis.
Oh boy. We're a emergency response company. If you go way back, right out of high school, I was working for my father's environmental mapping company. And next day after high school, I was on a plane down to Venezuela. And I live in Vancouver, and I'd never really been out of the country very much. So I was doing overflights over Lake Maracaibo, taking photographs of the coastline for environmental mapping. And within the first couple of days of my arrival there, I was being shot at by the FARC guerrillas that are on the Colombian Venezuelan border. So that was a real wake-up call for an 18-year-old kid. But I spent 10 years doing that type of work around the globe. I was in 10 different countries, and I had a long stint in Egypt. And there was a helicopter flight that I had over the Sinai Peninsula with an American ex-Vietnam pilot. And I flew over, and there was people in the back, and he told me, not to show them my camera, because if they saw my camera, we could be thrown in jail as spies. So I was terrified. I was probably 22 by now. And so we were flying over this area, and all I saw was pipeline after pipeline after pipeline that had been ruptured, and it was flowing into the Red Sea. So I was taking photographs of this stuff, and I landed back at the helicopter base, and he said to me, he said, I know why I took you up here, and I took you into some areas I'm not supposed to take you. Make sure that these photographs get back to the right people and that they see them. And he said, I know what you're doing, but he looked at me and he said, do you really think you can make a difference? And I was a young kid. I'm like, of course I'm going to make a difference. So that really, really resonated with me for the rest of my life. It's a long story. I wrote this, my experiences in my book. But I was there about 5 years on and off in Egypt, looking at these oil spills that were just horrific. And unfortunately, my father was incarcerated because I was working for my father's company. He came to visit at the end of our project, and he was thrown in jail, and I had to escape out of the country. And it was a crazy story. But I ended up coming back to Vancouver, and I broke off my father's company because I had so many clients around the world that I had met that needed help. And I was going to technical college at the time, British Columbia Institute of Technology, and I was in the mechanical engineering program. And I got another guy from that company, and he was working for my father as well. And we broke off and formed Aqua-Guard Spill Response. And what we do is we design and we manufacture spill response equipment to contain and to recover marine oil spills. So everything from like the Exxon Valdez in Alaska in 1989, all the way to the BP Horizon down in the Gulf of Mexico. So yeah, and we've been involved, done business in about 104 countries around the world. We have about 3,000 clients. Yeah, so that's a bit of a, I don't know if I went on a bit too long there, but that's a bit of a
no, that's
short of it.
Well, the thing from that is, that is a huge operation to run. And that sort of brings us into kind of what we're going to talk about today. So when you were saying that, I think I remember you saying when we were chatting that, and I've read some of your articles about this, that you literally wanted to give up. Like you got to the point where you were just so burnt out from doing everything and the ops and the whole thing that you just wanted to get out. So let's start there, but talk.
Yeah,
because a lot of people are getting burnt out now, right now.
I know, absolutely. And I totally feel for them. And we've gone through this, I don't know, 4 or 5, major times in my career life. There's the whole period, when you're a startup, you get out and you start your own thing. Like when I did with my father, I broke off. I had no money, complete debt. My wife had more money than I had. And we bought a little house and we basically rented everything out. And and I was building up this company called Aqua-Guard, and we had a little bit of business. We had everything leveraged, and then we hit a couple of home runs because after the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Alaska, they had to redo all of the equipment in Alaska, and we just happened to nail a really nice contract at that time. And it went from being a startup to the phase of absolute chaos, and I call it the doorknob effect. So I would get to the office every morning and I'd put my hand out and I would touch the doorknob and it would almost vibrate because I knew what was going on inside the office. I knew there was absolute chaos. So I would take a deep breath, and I would open the door and I'd step into an absolute bee's nest. And it went on for 20 years like that, in the shower every morning, not knowing if I could make payroll or if I, had to lay people off or if I could hire people. It was just this up and down roller coaster. And a friend of mine, he was a football player in the Canadian Football League. He was a 320-pound lineman, a big boy. He had just retired out of professional football, and he saw what I was going through. And he literally grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, and he said, "Nigel, I've joined this organization. It's called the Young Entrepreneurs Organization." It was called the Young Entrepreneurs Organization at the time. It's now called EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization. And he says, "You have to come to a meeting with me." And I just thought, there's no way. I don't have time. I've got 3 little kids. My business is out of control. I have not got time to go and even put my big toe into anything like that. And he literally grabbed me and he took me there. So I went to my first meeting, and I actually got recruited into what they call a forum group, a focus group of 9 people. And my wife and I talk about this to this day. I mean, this was 20 years ago that I joined. And we talk about it. I said, if we had not joined or been dragged into the Entrepreneurs Organization at that time, I don't know where we would be. We'd probably be divorced. We'd probably lost everything. And so I really hold a lot of respect for that, and for Trevor for dragging me in. And as the years kind of went by, I was still having a tough time. And I hired a coach. And his coach is Kevin Lawrence, and he's a Gazelle's scaling up coach. I've been working with Kevin for 15 years, and Kevin really helped me look at the perspective of everything, because we sat down, we had a 1-page plan, and the only things that went on this plan were things that Nigel wanted. What does Nigel want with the business? What does Nigel want with his life? And these were my goals. These weren't anybody else's goals. These were my goals. And every time I would veer, because entrepreneurs veer all over the place, he would come back to me and slap me back on track. He goes, "This isn't on your list. This isn't what you wanted." And what I found is after being smacked so many times out and then back, I kind of got it. I got into this rhythm. And I call it a life rhythm. I don't call it a life balance, because I think with a life balance, you have to give up one to get the other. It's a life rhythm. It's like you live your rhythm like a dance and a life. And once I got into this rhythm, things really started to happen quickly for me. And I can talk about how I eventually set up my business. But
what I'd love to just sort of pause there for a second, because I think what you just said, a lot of people are going through that anyway. And I think right now, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of this COVID-19 situation globally, where people are feeling like even worse than that doorknob thing that you talked about. People are afraid to get up in the morning. Not everyone. I mean, some businesses are flying, and some businesses
absolutely.
are quite well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But they're definitely, I'm lucky in the camp right now that the business is going, the virtual hub that I run is going okay, but it definitely, there was a month of just absolute chaos there. So, and I have had moments, a lot of moments like what you've spoken about. And, I got lucky in that I stumbled upon the Scaling Up book by Vern Harnish a few years ago.
Yeah, Vern.
Read
Yeah,
it
yeah.
and was like, that's it, I'm building this company this way. But what I want to know now, what I want to deal with now, and also a few people who've listened to me on this podcast before also know that I seem to have I've always had a bit of a bent towards systems, processes, teams, delegation. I'm actually quite good at it. And otherwise I wouldn't have been able to have 2 children while growing a company, which I've kind of done reasonably successfully. But so talk to me about those early days of what, like maybe, I mean, it was years obviously, but if we could distill it down into kind of what do you think are the top 2, 3, 4 things that a business owner needs to do and get a handle on in order to start to free themselves up from the day-to-day or from the ops, or delegate more effectively?
Yeah. I mean, for me, we just talked about peer groups. For me, peer group was huge, which was happens to be the Entrepreneurs Organization for me. And then there was an offshoot of the Entrepreneurs Organization, which was at MIT in Boston, which I went to, and I went to my very first meeting, and I was terrified. I have this like, it's almost an imposter syndrome. I felt I didn't belong there. Everybody was smarter than me. I'm dyslexic. I got ADD, and I have a business, but these guys are geniuses. I was almost throwing up as I drove up the driveway to this place at MIT, and I go in, and the first speaker, as you just mentioned him, the very first speaker was Vern Harnish. And Vern stood in front of the whole of 75 entrepreneurs, and I had hired a coach, because I had hired a coach just before this. And he looked out at everybody and he said, I've got a question for you. How many of you have coaches? How many of you in this class currently have coaches? And I thought, oh, everybody, they're all geniuses in this room. They're all smart business guys. So I had my head down on my desk, and I put my hand up. And I put my hand up like this, And all I heard him say was, only 3 of you of 75? 3 of you. And I looked around and I thought, this is unbelievable. These geniuses, these business people, they don't have coaches. And Vern said, Vern said, let me tell you guys, he said that you can't do life alone. He said the top business people on the planet, and at that time he was talking about Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Michael Dell. He said those 3 guys have multiple coaches. They can't do what they do alone. He says you need a coach. And I sat back and I was like, wow, that's really powerful stuff. And I've really lived through that for so many years. And the one thing that my coach helped me to do, I was also at the point where I was hiking one day. Kevin and I do a lot of hiking together, walk and talk stuff. And I was having a really hard time with the business. And Kevin said to me, Nigel, if somebody offered you something for your business right now, what would you sell it for? Like, what would you sell your business for today? And I said, $1. I said, I want my freedom back. I just want to get out. And he said, that's not good. He said, that's not good. Let's work with this and see what we can do. Because at that time, what I was doing is I was parachuting in C-suite CEOs and leaders. I would go out and I would poach them from competitors, and I would change the name every time. I'd be a CEO one time and a general manager the next time, or managing director the next. And I did that over 10 years. And all that did was totally disrupt the culture of my business. And the one thing that I didn't realize, that I had been growing organically from inside my business, people that knew everything about the business. People, this one young guy, he was with us since he was 18. He started sweeping the floor when he was young, and he worked his way up into estimating and sales and then design. And he was going to night school while he was working for us. And little did I know that he was doing most of the behind the scenes of running the business, not these other guys. And now he's now my partner. I bought my partner out of 30 years. I had another gentleman that I mentioned earlier, bought him out in 2012. And what I did is I said, this is, I really want you to be my partner. But here's a 1-page deal. It's just 1 page. These are the things that Nigel will do, and these are the things Nigel will not do from now on. Nigel is not going to fly down to Mexico and be a collection agency for overpaid bills. Nigel's not going to do this anymore, because that's what I was doing. But Nigel's going to do this. Nigel's going to be involved. For me, it was meeting with high level clients, trade shows, things like that, things that I really, really enjoyed. And we signed it, and we set the deal up. So he did a earn out, like he bought my other partner out actually over through dividends. We were profitable, so it was a dividend deal over 7 years. And so he's been running the company ever since. I've been able to step back, and I was there for about a year after we signed this deal. And then I was actually able to leave with my family, and I traveled the world for a year. And we went to 17 different countries, off the grid, one small bag each, 3 t-shirts, 1 pair of shorts, pair of flip-flops, for a year with my kids. And they were a little bit older. We homeschooled my daughter in grade 9. My son had just graduated from high school, and my other son was in university. So he would come in and out.
Yeah.
It was the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I thought, so with my ego was, I can't leave the business. And Kevin Lawrence said to me, I never forget this, we'd set everything up in the business. Everything was running great. We had Cameron Jans, this amazing, amazing guy running the business. And Kevin said to me, Nigel, you have this list of all these things you wanted to do in your life. This is your list. This is your life. This is your life dream. There's one thing left on this list that you haven't accomplished. And I said, okay, what is it? He goes, is take off with your family for a year. And I said, oh, come on, Kev, there's no way. I can't do this because of this. I can't, all the can't. And he said, stop. Is your wife, my wife's name is Reiko. She's Japanese. And she was in the kitchen of the house. And he says, she's there? And I said, yeah, she's here. He said, ask her. I said, okay. So I yelled this, hey, Reiko, the thing on the list, you want to, can you go? Thinking she was going to say absolutely no way. And she said, let's go. And we set it up in about 3 months. We made no plans. We did not plan this trip. We left. We ended up going to London first, and then we just let it evolve from there, wherever our kids wanted to go. And it was the most incredible thing. And I would not been able to do that without my coach. I would not been able to do that with having this organically grown, great person inside my business. Our 1-page plan that we set up to make the business run. That was in 2012. I set it up. 20, we took off for a year, and now it's so many years later, 2020.
Yeah.
And and I spend maybe half a day a week with my business, because I'm financially connected. I'm 60% owner, and Cameron is 40% owner.
I want to dig. I've got so many questions. I want to rewind completely and dig right into that, because it's so you got the coach, and I'll dig for you, because I know what our listeners.
Sure.
So because lots of people have coaches, right? So you've got a coach, and big shout out to Matt Malouf, who co-hosts this show with me normally. He's in Australia right now. He's up to his eyes with his own clients. He's a fantastic coach. Right. That I started out with, and he was there when I started the virtual hub and came up with this idea. So big high five out to Matt. But so you got the coach, but and then the organic, I 100% agree with you. The organic growth.
Yeah.
People inside your business, don't ignore it, because I've done that really successfully in the Philippines. Now, I have brought in a couple of people that needed more experience, in certain functions like HR and head of that sort of thing. But I have grown. My master trainers were original VAs with me that had no experience being VAs, and I grew them up and they're with me years. So I'm a big fan of that strategy, and I think a lot of people don't invest the time, energy, and training in doing that, or the interest. But I want to dig in deeper into what the coach worked with you on. So let's talk about operational, the boring stuff, the processes, the systems, the meeting rhythms. How did you bring it all in? And did you have any of that before?
Yeah, I'm from the Entrepreneurs Organization too. When I joined, our Bible at the time was a book called The E-Myth, which is Michael Gerber's E-Myth. And now it's the E-Myth Revisited. And all that talks about is, the reason you start a business is you set it up, and then you set up the systems in order system, so then you can actually step out one day or package it up and sell it or whatever.
Mhm.
And so that was really kind of the Bible of, wow, we need to. So yeah, in our business, just having the people and the departments and the systems, and it's just, I'm not saying it happened organically, but it
Was it painful
absolute
though? Was
key,
it
absolute key.
when you realized it? Like sometimes when you read Michael Gerber's
Yeah.
book, you
Yeah.
go, I totally get it. Oh, but oh my God, that's such an uphill battle. Like I just
Right.
feel like I'm staring at Mount Everest to try. And we see clients coming to us at the virtual hub like this, where they feel
Yeah.
they know why they need to do it, they know what they need to do, but you're staring at Mount Everest when you've got nothing really built, and everything's kind of in your own head
Yeah.
or in the heads of the people who
Yeah.
work. And can you give any
Well,
advice?
again, like I mentioned earlier, a life rhythm. Like it's a life rhythm in your business as well. You create this rhythm, and at the beginning, it's really painful. Like I mentioned, I kept getting smacked out to the side. You have to get smacked so many times
Yeah.
to get onto a flow. And your brain and your organization actually does get rewired to get into this
Mhm.
rhythm. And once you start doing it, it
It's a
actually
commitment
does.
to it, I think. Yeah, it's a
And it's a commitment. So I mean, our commitments, we were, there's a friend of mine, Brian Scudamore, that has a company called 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and he was in my class at MIT as well. But he would his morning huddles, just just key. And that's, we do when all our guys or people were together, we could do, but now they're all over the place. So
Mm.
now we do them virtually. We do the virtual huddles, and you're gone, and you're just checking in and checking the pulse of what's going on. They're not meetings, they're huddles. They're quick.
Huddles,
They're
yeah.
like 7 minutes at the most, and you're off.
Yeah, we do them
And
as
then
well. It was game changer for us at the virtual hub. We
yeah,
merged it
yeah.
with
And
the
then you're searching, and then we have so you have a one-page plan with my business partner. We have a one-page plan with the company, which actually came out of the Rockefeller Habits book,
Mhm.
which is a Vern Harnish book as well. Yeah, and our quarterly meetings and our quarterly updates, and
So one of the
just
things
getting
that
into the flow.
one of the things that I hear, not a lot these days, but I used to hear it a lot in the beginning when I started the virtual hub from clients that would come in. The number
Yeah,
one thing, and normally it was smaller businesses, solopreneurs, this kind of thing. And they would say to me on these sales calls that I used to do, I would invariably hear
yeah,
well, I just don't want to micromanage someone. And if it takes too long, I may as well do it myself. And I used to say,
right, right.
well, that's all fine, right? But you're getting a virtual assistant. That's what we do. They're an
Yeah.
assistant, right? So if you have that mindset, in a year's
Mm-hmm.
time, I can guarantee you one thing: you'll still be doing it yourself. Like if you're not willing to
Absolutely.
invest the
What I
time and
found
the
is when I originally broke off of my father's company, I took my sister with me, and there was this other guy, Lawrence. He was I call him the mad scientist. He was the guy, incredible brain, engineering brain. But my sister and I we were big into adventure. We were into backcountry skiing, mountain climbing, and mountaineering.
gain.
And what we would do in those times is we would toggle off the company, because I knew she was off to climb Mount Logan and I was off to go to Nepal or whatever we were doing. And so I would leave. I would leave, and she would run, look after the business, and we would kind of trade off like that. For many years, we did that. And I would come back just totally, rejuvenated. But my sister only stayed with me for 4 years. And then she left. We ended up buying her out. But I kept that rhythm going. And I know, again, at my class in Boston, another thing that Vern said, it's all this Vern stuff. Vern said was, if you've been an owner of a business or startup or whatnot for, I can't remember, 4 or 5 years, you need to take like 1, 2, or 3 months away. And I thought, that's not possible. Like I do my little jaunts. And he said, because you just need to get away. You need to get clear. All your best thinking happens in that space. And I really find that now, with all of us in this lockdown, the quiet is where really cool stuff happens. And it's been happening for me. It's been happening for our people. All these great new ideas are coming out. And so I would keep doing that. I got into this life rhythm of I had a hard time at first with my ego, because if I go away, I don't know, nobody can do my business as well as I can. I need to be involved. But then I would leave for a week, and then I go for 2 weeks, then I go for a month, and I'd come back and everything's fine. Well, I went for a year. And
Did
I
you
would check
contact
in.
anyone during that? Did you check in?
Okay, yeah, I did. So at the beginning, the difficult part is the first part, because your ego's still connected to you. I can't go for a year. This is ridiculous. But I would check in. I would Skype. I'd Skype in at that time. And everything was fine. And then the longer I was away, the less I checked in.
Mm.
So at first it would be I check in every 2 weeks, and it was every month, and it was like every 6 weeks. And then by the time I came back, I thought, oh, has our company burned down? What's happened? I walk in, and the weirdest thing for me was I'd been away for a year. I had so many life experiences with myself and my family, just mind-boggling. We're high in the Himalayas to offshore Brazil to surfing on every coastline that you can imagine. It was absolutely amazing. I walk into my office and we did a huddle. Everybody huddles around and like, hey, Nigel, how is it? What was your favorite place? Blah, 5 minutes. And then everybody scampered off and everybody was doing their thing. They hadn't missed me at all. It was unbelievable. For me, I was sad because they hadn't missed me, but I'm like, this is actually, Nigel, what you wanted to set up. This was your dream, and it actually worked. Can
I ask you, Nigel, then, for the team then? So obviously, I love the E-Myth, Michael Gerber. I mean, if anyone's listening to this, the only 2 books I think you need to read personally are the E-Myth Revisited with Michael Gerber and Scaling Up by Hearn Varnish.
Good to Great's good too.
Good to Great is good too, yeah.
Good to Great, yeah.
So the roles then, so obviously you grew organically your person that became the partner in the business and took over the running. So they were the ones that the CEO, they became kind of acting.
Yeah, CEO. Yeah, he's the CEO. I'm not CEO anymore. No.
So you're not the CEO anymore.
No, I'm called co-founder.
Yeah. What are the other roles that, when we're thinking about getting to this level? I mean, growing a CEO from inside, I think, is a great idea, although potentially takes a long time.
Yeah, it took a long time. It took a long time.
The COO role, the ops, like somebody running the implementation, because the CEO is a great role, but then there's the implementation and who's going to run the people and the teams and the integrator.
All the people that we have that are doing that were all brought in by Cam, which is the CEO. They were all brought in over time. I mean, it's been quite a long time now. Brought in, and they just work like a well-oiled machine. I only go in and I screw things up if I stick my nose in there. And they're younger. I mean, I'm 58 now and he's 40. And so we have this, he's full of vim and vigor. He's got a young family and he's extremely driven. And I was just very fortunate to have him with us for since he was a young man. And the rest of our team too. They've been with us. I mean, we have very little turnover. We just have a great team, and he is just a fantastic leader. And I don't know if I lucked out or I just failed so many times trying to parachute in people. And organically we were growing these people. It just and it just kind of happened. It was just.
And then it becomes a family. That's actually like a family.
Yeah, it's like a family. It is like a family. Yeah, we're like a big family, and we have regional managers that are operate remotely. We have a gentleman, Francisco Jimenez. He's a Venezuelan that got out of Venezuela, mid 20 years ago, and was in Miami. And I hired him out of Miami, and he was managing Latin America for me. And he was in Miami. Then he moved to Vancouver. But it was tough for him to manage Latin America, Vancouver. So we have a place in Panama now, which he manages all of Latin America. But he lives in Vancouver. But he spends 3 months in Panama remotely. And we zoom in and zoom out through our Zoom calls. And we keep in touch. And he reports. It works great. I mean, it's been working really, really well.
So there's been no break. So because, you kind of ran, I mean, you're running it virtually at the moment because you're in Whistler.
I'm in Whistler.
You're sort of doing it remotely, but has there been any break or any issues with moving? Because what I was thinking here is I'm always talking about virtual teams, remote, and how you do stuff with virtual assistants or offshore teams or anything like that. But what I'm sort of hearing is that if your company is actually set up in the right way, it doesn't really matter if you got the right setup, you can go virtual or go remote or come back to the office and the same thing happens.
Yeah.
That's what you're finding.
Yeah, and my contribution to my company is more on the not the kind of the higher level sales, keeping connected with our higher level customers, It was trade shows, which have all been canceled now. So now I'm keeping in touch with everybody virtually. So that's kind of, I mean, it's not that difficult to do virtually at all, you know, if to keep in contact. In fact, I'm in contact more now virtually than I was before, because it's become the new norm. This is the new norm, just to Zoom somebody, you know,
Oh, look, I mean, to be
pick up
honest,
the phone or Zoom it. It's
yeah, and I mean, I have a situation. I was just thinking about it today, where I mean, I've always run my company remotely because it's in the Philippines and I don't live in the
yeah,
Philippines, so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
always been that way. Now they are all in an office, but at the moment they're all remote. But
yeah,
we've always had a Facebook group for our employees, right? So we're all in
yeah,
the
yeah.
Facebook group, and with Facebook Lives these days, it's like I can just pop in at any
Oh,
time.
I know.
So
Yeah,
I
we
pop
use WhatsApp. Yeah, we use WhatsApp with our. We have different groups in our. We have different WhatsApp groups in our company, and then my CEO and I have our own little WhatsApp just back and forth. And we have different groups with our WhatsApp, which works really. And I'm also involved in a group called the 3CEOs.com, and what we're doing is we're doing speaking. We're helping entrepreneurs around the globe with issues during the COVID-19 outbreak here. But so I've got one of them is Todd Palmer. He's in Detroit. Andy Biting is in New Brunswick, and we run that out of New Brunswick virtually. Everything's virtually. His assistant, they're all there, and everything that we do, I'm on a Zoom call with them every day, and you know, we never meet in person, and we're doing talks for all the entrepreneurs. So we did Winnipeg last week. We're doing Toronto on Friday. We're doing Malaysia next week. And we're doing these webinars and everything is virtual.
So I'm keen to know
Really
then,
cool.
in this COVID situation, and this is kind of circling
Yeah.
back to where we started this conversation around when you were in that moment of total burnout, and you were almost
Yes.
willing to pay someone to take the company off you or just sell it
Yeah.
for $1. And
Yeah.
you're obviously coming across people who might be feeling that way now. And what are you hearing from those webinars you're doing from the people in those chapters of the EO? And
Yeah,
what
I'm hearing
they,
all different types of things. I had a really nice comment from somebody in Winnipeg, and she was having a really hard time. And when I mentioned the point about selling my business for $1, she said she broke down in tears because she was in that same place. And I've been in that place so many times. And what I've really noticed, for me anyway, is the optics. So back in 2008 was tough. It was a tough time for a lot of people. And I had a fraud case inside my business at the same time. Our CFO, we had a big fraud. He's actually ended up doing a few years in prison because of it. So our company was going bankrupt. But at that time, the stock market crashed. I'm an environmental company, but really everything's dictated by the oil industry because we clean up the mess that the oil industry makes. So the oil prices were really low, and we were going bankrupt. But we were doing everything for everybody. And I sat back and I thought, okay, you got to look at this a different way. We got to turn this on its head. What can we do? What can we do different? And I thought, okay, oil, the sweet oil on the surface of Texas is gone. Near shore stuff is tough to get. This is before fracking.
mm-hmm.
Where's the big market? Where's the big market coming from? And I thought, it's offshore. It's offshore. So we actually basically took all our eggs from one basket, put them into another, and focused on niche, high margin, and it was offshore for us. And so we were going bankrupt. And Cameron Jans at the time, this is the guy that was coming up through our company. I was pretty much out in my head. I was so messed up, and my business partner was too. He said, let's make a deal with the bank, see if we can keep our business alive till Christmas. This was in July. And we said, do whatever we can. So we focused on the offshore. We were able to pick up some incredible contracts on some equipment we had never built before. We'd never built it before. And it kept us alive. And then our whole business shifted. So we just couldn't see. I guess, the forest through the trees type thing. We were so focused on the business, the way our business had always run. Our business had always run like this. We did everything for everybody, which higher volume, lower margins. We flipped everything. We turned everything on its head, and we went, we need to get high margins. It's a lower volume, but much higher volumes, but much higher numbers.
And it's
and we
neat.
went into a
You become
completely different
experts in
spot.
that.
And the only reason that happened to us is because of the crisis, because of 2008, because of the fraud case. If those two things didn't happen, they were blessings in disguise. If they didn't happen, we would have been on the same path as we were and probably just died a slow death.
Mm.
And this has happened so many times to me. So the only thing I can say to people out there that are having a really hard time is, what aren't we seeing? What are the optics? What are we looking at? Are we just trying to do something the way we've always done it? The world's changed. The world has completely changed. And maybe what we were doing before isn't going to be something for the new world, but there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's so many things. I mean, you look at, these businesses that are thriving, home delivery, organic food, home delivery, all these things that you would never have thought of before. Zoom is
It took
all these
off.
technologies that are being born out of this. And the only way that these things come up is the only way that I have evolved personally. If the only time that I've evolved is if I've been pushed so far to the edge, almost falling off, but then had a big aha moment when you're almost about to fall. It's a terrible thing to say, but that's where I operate the best. And that's when my best ideas come, is when I'm
like that. I'm in a perpetual state of like, I like to be, I said to my husband one day, I was like, why is it that I need to be on the edge of the precipice before I like burst open a great idea, or I come out strong? It's like,
I know. It's like a climbing, like I do a lot of climbing. I did a lot of climbing, and it would always be on those crazy adventures where it would be, it's life and death. You got a rope clipped in, you got a carabiner, or you got some ice coming down on you. I was doing some ice climbing on a mountain once, and the whole glacier moved. Everything shook. The ice was falling down, and we thought we were all dead. And you come out of those moments, you have these epiphanies, it's, and they're great stories afterwards too.
But they are very powerful.
If you live.
I think you're right, though. I think one of the challenges people, and anyone listening to this, I think what happens to people, if you're either fight, flight, or freeze, and I'm a fight. Like if someone, like I'm sort of quite even keel until someone goes and attacks me, and then I'll fight to the death to win. So like if it's kind of, I've got that.
I have ADD, and actually my coach and I, Kevin Lawrence, have formed a group called giftadd.com to prove that people with ADD aren't freaks. We're actually gifted. And the incredible thing, if you look at the statistics over time, so many entrepreneurs have ADD or dyslexic. But I find with me being ADD, when I get that push, the adrenaline push, in my day-to-day life, I'm all over the place. But when I get that push, I can focus, and I focus like an arrow. And it's a very common trait with people with ADD. And maybe that's why people with ADD, there are a lot of entrepreneurs have ADD.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm quite systems minded and all that sort of thing. But the people who go into freeze, though, I mean, there's the ones that go into flight completely, but the ones that go into freeze, if you're sort of listening to this and you're thinking, oh, that's me, I just go rabbit in the headlights. I think, what I've been saying to our clients and to people is, never waste a good crisis. I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but
it's terrible. It's terrible.
It's terrible, but it's true. Like you just have
all the best things that have ever happened inside my company, it's crazy, have been formed during a crisis.
Yes. And I think, when we were talking on this mastermind, I don't know whether you were on the first one that I was on with the group of people that we do that with. And I was saying that I could feel the adrenaline in my fingertips of this coming, and I thought it's a terrible crisis. But I remember the last one was horrific for me, the 2008 thing. But I actually came out of it and ended up, long story, but I did sweat equity in a company that ended up going to, it's worth $60-70 million now. Not my share, but the company, and it was born out of that time and me taking risk on and getting that adrenaline in my fingertips feeling. And this is the time to not, now having said that, I also think it's a time to maybe sit back and listen to your intuition a bit too. And you don't have to rush into anything, but it is the time to rise when you're tired. Like you might be tired, but you have to rise into it. Yeah,
exactly. And I have a good friend of mine that's a shaman. He's a Peruvian shaman. I've done a lot of stuff down in Peru, and I was having a hard time. I don't know, several years ago, with my father, and he said to me, Nigel, you have to realize that all the difficult things that you've experienced in your life through your father, he's actually been a coach to you. And I said, how is this possible? How could this be a coach? Because you would not be the person that you are now unless those things happened.
100%.
Some of them may be terrible,
because
he nailed it. He nailed it. And it's so true. I would not be sitting here in front of you now unless all of this happened to me during my life, all these really difficult times and all the good stuff. So,
well, listen, I thank you so much for joining us on the show, because
Barbara, it's been a pleasure.
I really said to myself, it's that you've been on both, you're now on the other side, and you've been on the first side. And I know most entrepreneurs have, but you were there for 20 years. I mean, in that kind of horrible uphill battle feeling. And I know there's lots of business owners that are like that. And it's just those key things, I think, just to read the things you said.
There's just one thing that I want to say that I really learned over the whole period is that as an entrepreneur, we're always in crisis, but I would say never sacrifice your family for a business crisis, because our family are the most important thing. And that's what I've found.
Yes. And that's why
dear to me.
I always say to people, it's so worth spending the time to, getting delegation right, getting the right, getting a team in place, actually even just delegating to a simple virtual assistant like what we do at the Virtual Hub. We have so many smaller businesses that come to us and that's where they start their journey. And the ones that spend the time, the energy, and they put the time into actually getting it right, it pays the largest dividends in the end.
It does.
And that's the best work you can do is to learn how to delegate effectively. And then you start your journey towards building your systems, your teams, and eventually getting to the stage where you've gone to, which.
And it started with me again with, joining the peer group, which was amazing, and a focus group inside a peer group, which was the Entrepreneurs Organization. And then also the coach, but a good coach. You need a good coach, that's someone who's going to hold you accountable to your life goals. Yeah. And that's what started it off.
Well, listen, thank you again for joining us. And anyone who is listening to this show, please, share it with your friends and colleagues. It will be up on iTunes soon. We're on Facebook Live at the moment. Nigel, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone, until next time, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Barbara.